Hello friends, and a warm welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I am Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. These episodes are love notes from me, sharing the things that I sometimes need to hear myself as well. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to my allotment plot and balcony garden, finding joy in the little things, and embracing our wonderful small home. In these episodes, I delve into what it means to walk a different path, stepping outside societal norms and embracing all the beauty it provides. Together, we'll learn how to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic of living in the present moment. I welcome you to come on this journey with me and maybe open your mind to a different way of living. I hope you find what you're looking for in the words of these episodes, and I hope they speak to you in your own unique way. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, and if you're new here, this is a podcast where we dive into the art of slowing down, living intentionally, and just embracing a slower and simpler and more seasonal way of living. And today I wanted to talk about something personal to me, something that I used to define my whole life really. I was addicted to productivity. I lived by to-do lists. I measured my worth on how much I accomplished. And if I wasn't constantly doing, I felt like I was failing. But over time, I really started to realize that this obsession with being productive wasn't making me happy, it was burning me out and exhausting me. So today I want to share with you how I became trapped in this cycle of productivity addiction. The moment I realized I couldn't keep living that way, what changed, how I started embracing slow and intentional living, and also some steps to help you if you are struggling with the same thing. So if you've ever felt guilty for not being productive or struggled to slow down, let me say this, I absolutely see you, and this episode is for you. So I became addicted to productivity around the same time I joined multi-level marketing, and they're two inherently linked things, but also one can definitely exist without the other. And I think to some extent I had picked up productivity somewhere along the line. I particularly remember, this feeling of always being overproductive and just tying my self-worth to what I was accomplishing. And I think looking back, I can really see how I fell into the trap of overproductivity. And so, maybe parts of this story will feel familiar to you as well. So I definitely, like I said, tied my self-worth to what I accomplished from school to work. I just kind of got in my head that success was all about achieving, and the more tasks I checked off, the more accomplished I felt. And it became a bit of a habit. And I think when I joined a multi-level marketing company, they very much push this whole idea of you basically have to work all the time. Now, they won't tell you that. Multi-level marketing is very, I was going to say smart, but I don't really want to call it smart. They do something called bait and switch. So what they will do is they will tell you, this business is really easy. You only have to work in the small pockets of time of your day. You can do it, you can do it in just half an hour a day if you need to. And then that's the bait. And then once you join, the switch is if you're not finding success, and let's be honest, 99.6% of people either don't make or lose money in a multi-level marketing company. When you're in the position where you're not seeing the revenue you maybe expected and that was sold to you when you joined, you'll be like, what's going on? And somebody in your upline or in your team or somewhere in the company will switch all of that round on you. All of that, you can work in the pockets of time in your day. You need half an hour. They'll switch that and they'll be like, well, you're not working hard enough. And it's just this endless cultish cycle. But I think that overproductivity was already in my life, and I think it multi-level marketing really reinforced it harder. And when I broke up with multi-level marketing was when I started my slow living journey. So they're intrinsically connected there, for me at least. But I really believed that being busy meant I was being successful. And somewhere along the way, I just absorbed this idea that the busier I was, the better I was doing in life. And sometimes that really still sneaks in. Sometimes I sit here to work. I work one evening a week. And that definitely helps narrow my focus and doesn't allow me to do things just for the sake of it. I have to really be focused on my work. And I think, I just picked up this idea that if I had a full calendar, it meant that things were going well. But that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it just means you're exhausted. And slowing down, I guess, at the time, and we're talking many, many years ago now, it felt like I was being lazy. And this is still a lie that is perpetuated a lot. We hear it a lot. We hear if people take like a slow morning, they'll say, I had a lazy morning. And, we're still very much, the whole world society is very much tied up in being productive. And I think the truth is that for so many of us, we don't know how to just be. I really think we struggle with that. And it's taken a lot for me to get to where I am and sort of unpick that, I think. But, there came a point where I realised I couldn't keep living like it. And for me, it was definitely part of leaving an MLM. When I left multi-level marketing, I went into this deep dive on anti-MLM content. And suddenly I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot worse than I thought. There's so much brainwashing that occurs in multi-level marketing, and it's horrifying. What horrifies me the most, actually, is how susceptible any of us are to that manipulation. And I still see it all of the time on social media. People that are in multi-level marketing companies, there's nothing you can do. They're not going to listen. But something that I hate about multi-level marketing is how they take all of the red flags and basically brainwash you into ignoring them. It's really bad. But for me, slow living and multi-level marketing are intrinsically linked, because leaving one obviously sent me on this deep dive. And, I spent most nights when I went to bed wide-eyed watching a video oh my goodness, what is occurring? Or what has occurred? What have I been part of? And just identifying with so much of it. And that, like I said, led me on to a slower way of living. And it made me realise that I didn't want to and I couldn't continue to live in that real busyness, fast environment. And I started to realise that my productivity was actually not connected to my self-worth. But, I think we get so focused on doing that we don't actually live. We're constantly moving, constantly working, and we're not present for any of it. And I think the real truth is that if we keep going like this, then life will just pass us by. And we spend so much time chasing productivity that we end up not experiencing our own lives. And that is something we need to change. We need to break up with productivity addiction, because so many people have it. And it's not easy because it is so ingrained in us, because that's how we've been taught for years, potentially even since birth. And it takes a real lot of unlearning. And I think first and foremost what we have to do is just redefine productivity. And I think we have this tendency to measure productivity all wrong. And instead of seeing it as how much can I accomplish, we need to start thinking what matters? What kind of life do I want to create? How can I be intentional with my time instead of just filling it? And sometimes the most productive thing we can do is rest or reflect or just exist without rushing to the next thing. And part of that is just learning to be present. Now, I don't think we can be present all the time, but I think we can weave that presence into our lives. So for me, it will include things like drinking my morning coffee without scrolling on my phone, being outside for a couple of minutes while I do so, as long as it's not tipping down with rain, going for a walk and looking around and noticing my surroundings, reading for enjoyment and not for self-improvement. Listen, that's a biggie. In the MLM world, everything is about self-improvement and bettering yourself and being bigger and better than the person you were the day before. And everything is about reading self-improvement books and personal development books. And yes, stepping away from that and reading for enjoyment is huge. And at first it feels uncomfortable. But for me, over time, as I started realizing that these were the moments that made life more meaningful and not those things that are tasks on my to-do list. That's not what's full of meaning. And as well, because I came from that MLM background as well, for me, like I said, they're so intrinsically linked. Would I have started slowing down if I hadn't been in the MLM? I don't really know. But it's letting go of that hustle mindset, because in multi-level marketing, the hustle mindset is huge, it's everything. But I stopped glorifying that hustle and that busyness. And instead of trying to cram my schedule really full, instead I started to create space in it. And that meant saying no a little more, no to maybe unnecessary obligations or commitments that didn't really align with who I am and what my values are. And also the biggest one, saying no to the idea that my worth is tied or defined by my productivity. And I think something we all really struggle with as well, which I struggle with too, and I think sometimes I still struggle with it, if I'm honest, is prioritizing rest, but predominantly prioritizing rest without guilt. Because firstly, I think when we do that, we feel uneasy. We are so indoctrinated and we feel like we should be doing something. And it takes a while to realize that rest isn't just okay, it's absolutely necessary, and it in and of itself is productive, because taking time to pause and recharge can help us be more present, creative, and just more in tune with ourselves. And so when we give ourselves that permission to rest, when I gave myself that permission to rest, it really changes everything. And we're so stuck in these cycles of overproductivity. And so I want to share a few ways that we can sort of start to shift our mindset around that. Before we dive back into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment to share something I absolutely love: Riverford Organic. If you've been looking for a way to make your meals feel more seasonal, wholesome, and aligned with your values, Riverford is a game changer. Riverford delivers fresh organic produce right to your door, straight from the farm. Everything is grown with care and respect for the earth, so you know that when you're cooking with their ingredients, you're nourishing both your body and the planet. If you want to try a Riverford box and get a £15 credit off your second order, go to theslowlivingcollective.com/Riverford. That's theslowlivingcollective.com/Riverford. What I would say is start noticing your habits and pay attention to when you feel the urge to be constantly busy. And just start asking yourself some really simple questions like, is this necessary, or am I just doing it out of habit? And reevaluate your priorities. Think about what actually matters to you. If you had to strip away the busyness, what would remain? And I did a podcast episode on this a couple of weeks ago about what is left when you strip away busyness. So go check that out. It was just a couple of weeks ago. And I will also link it in the show notes as well, because that is really interesting to just help you evaluate what is there when you strip away all of the busyness, what remains. And the big takeaway is that you remain, and that it's just figuring out what that looks like. And practice doing nothing and without guilt. And I know that's difficult, but set some time aside to just be, with nothing to do, no to-do lists, just being present in that moment. And something I'm a big fan of is creating boundaries with technology, because productivity addiction often comes with constant stimulation. So try set limits on emails and notifications, screen time, just to give yourself a bit more mental space. And overall, it's about redefining what success is and what it will look like. So instead of measuring success by how much you accomplish, try measuring it by how present and fulfilled that you feel as well. And if you take away one thing from this episode, I want it to be this. This is actually a couple of things, but if you take away a couple of things from this episode and let it be these things. You are not defined by your productivity. You do not need to earn rest, and you are allowed to slow down and simply exist. And I know how hard it is to unlearn the idea that busyness equals success. But honestly, on the other side of that belief, you will feel so free. So I want you to just give yourself permission today to slow down. Your worth is not in what you do, it's in who you are. So I hope this episode resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. Come leave me a comment over on Substack. I always post my episodes there, and the show notes are attached, and it's very easy to leave a comment. You can find me on Substack, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I am so grateful to have you here. If you want to follow me, like I said, you can come find me over on Substack. That's where I hang out a lot. theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. I am there at The Slow Living Collective. And if you're enjoying the Slow Living Collective podcast, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. So until next time, remember, you are enough just as you are, and I will catch you in the next episode.